Chapter 1. Commencement. I am Agnia Nim, daughter of Lester and Joselaine Nim from the Kingdom of Westmain. Though I do not know what the future holds, I have charged myself to give this account as I wish to create a historical record of what has transpired that reveals the hidden knowledge of our existence and coincides with the documented events of my ventures. As a recent graduate student of Langdon University, a new explorer, and an educated scholar intrigued by chronicles of magic, which fascinated me as a little girl, I believe it is crucial to provide contextual history and perhaps some impractical social norms. Should this account survive to reach a new generation, if the culture and understanding of magic are perhaps dramatically transformed by what is taking place in these present times? I apologize if I am thorough. I believe it is necessary to understand our current era. The current year is 263 RB from when I began this chronicle. Rebirth, RB, represents the beginning of the world anew after the End War, time-stamping historical events in what is known as the Last Age. 3 civilizations were victorious in their alliance at the war's conclusion: the Kingdom of Eastgard, the Kingdom of Westmain, and lastly, the Kingdom of Nod. Ceasefire in the world returned when the war ended in 135 RB. Each alliance has remained strong between the 3 victors, swearing an oath to maintain peace with one another. Once, the Earth was separated into various landmasses known as continents, spread out with unique civilizations, with great distances of water between their expanse. We know there were at least 7 main masses. Our historical records show that the continents collided, forming one enormous landmass, the Great Collide, a catastrophic earthquake period that nearly caused every civilization's extinction. It occurred approximately 600 years ago, a year being calculated by our current standards as 324 days, a cycle of 24 hours, 1,440 minutes, and 86,400 seconds. There are 12-month cycles, with each month cycle calculating 27 days. People who survived the Great Collide's 100 years of tremors and the appearance of sudden rifts swallowing cities whole began to rebuild. Several encased their cities into mountainsides created by the collision of the continents, erecting outer walls, many too steep and treacherous to scale, for other growing civilizations to forego an invasion. Yet, conquering walled cities became more accessible once the ability to fly was invented. Thus, the race for steam tech and building the best airships began. During the End War, battles mainly occurred on airships known as warships, military airships, rather than on the ground. But before the first airship took flight, various people groups began to disappear into what is identified now as the Dead Lands. Scholars who recorded the land's rapid transformation during the war described the region as thriving and breathing, to quote one famous explorer and scholar, Sandolph Collins. Therefore, airships are often used today to travel from region to region, keeping passengers and cargo from being lost. Even within their own kingdoms, people have whispered of the land changing before their very eyes, as if possessed by magic. For this reason, it is uncommon for civilized folk to leave the safety of their city's walls. Although there are other means of travel, such as madmen sailing machines across treacherous sea, or explorers who dare to trek the Deadlands on foot. The End War would last 80 years, 3 months, and 22 days, with numerous clans conjoining into factions during that time. And while others surrendered to the supremacy's rule due to their inability to possess the resource that allows the enchanting of machinery, steam tech continued being researched, yet enchanting the auto-navigation for airships was practically impossible, until mystic silver became introduced as a fuel source. The mysteries of magic are very elusive in its workings or how to wield it. It is commonly known that when someone encounters the rare metal, something is awakened within them. There are, in fact, rituals in Eastgard of mothers and fathers taking their children into temples that house the priceless metal on a pilgrimage to have their offspring touch it and see if they are awakened as keepers. Incredibly, they could be anyone within or outside the civilized world, beyond the dwelling gates, pertaining to anything not within walled cities. The discovery of mystic silver awakening a keeper was revolutionary. When keepers began using mystic silver to power machines, they were sought out and even targeted for assassination by other civilizations. Some of these eliminations succeeded, hindering promising developments of specific steam tech, and assisted in developing mistrust between rival civilizations, and sparked many short skirmishes between neighbouring lands. By 55 RB, the entire landmass was in conflict, and racing to take control of the skies with the new fuel source. While keepers can only perform the sole task of enchanting machines to create new steam tech, a master keeper, MKR, is an entirely different mystery, as no one knows how to become one. Elior Listander is the only MKR indeed known, until now. Also, no other mind has come close to achieving what he has done. To his credit, he invented the essential navigation tools referred to as bio-engineered steam tech, and each of his inventions has momentously assisted US explorers and scholars in finding new artifacts and propelled steam tech advancements of the Three Kingdoms. Nanomites, 119 RB, also known as living silver, is a widely known for patented type of sentient enchantment made directly from mystic silver that lives without food, water, or even oxygen. Nanomites are housed inside several items and are enchanted to send signals to one another, even allowing audio signals to travel great distances. The disadvantage of nanomites is the exposure to oxygen and rapidly perish when subjected, rendering any enchanted item they are in sync with entirely useless. Nanomites are created within a vacuum-sealed environment and encased in an enchanted item. The amount of mystic silver to create the nanomites necessary for most steam tech is less than 1/1000th of a mass unit. Thanks to Elior's knowledge, keepers can scrape a few flakes off the core of the metal to enchant machinery. The second of Elior's patent inventions are single-hand clocks, SHCs, 120 RB, specific navigation devices for airships and explorers. Navigators of airships today use nanomites housed in the navigation deck. The captain charts a course, and the navigator turns the SHC hand to any direction desired, making the airship automatically fly along the specified route. This does not keep the airship from being manually controlled. Yet, if an airship battle ensues, captains can grab hold of the helm to fly the airship during its engagement manually. Once the battle is over, and if the airship has survived, it will instinctively turn back to the course it was plotted by the SHC. Due to the invention of the SHC, airships are being built more prominent and able to go higher into the skies without ever needing to see the ground. A smaller model of SHCs is a wrist-worn fashion statement used by explorers and citizens to navigate throughout a city, syncing to nanomites kept in a specific tower. This tower is known as the North Tower, a historical directional term once used before the Great Collide. Other directional terms such as South, East, and West are still used today, but are only terms used when referring to a region or place in relation to one another on a map, or a clearly defined area such as within a city. The Deadlands is never a clearly defined area, and neither are the skies. Each city has a north tower, allowing an airship to gauge the direction of the city they are flying into. These north towers house a third unique bioengineered invention of Elior's known as magic beacons, 159 RB. Cities use magic beacons in their north towers and other specific markers to communicate with airships or citizens about the city's layout. For example, if an airship is looking for a precise landing platform, it may be directed to an exact location in the city using north, south, east, or west. These terms are applied to city walls as well. Two of these terms also remain within the names of two of the Three Kingdom territories, West Main and Eastgard. The Society of Explorers and Scholars has so aptly renamed the magic beacon, Invention Magic Beans. For that is what it is, a bean grown from the soil. Nanomites in magic beans remain protected in airtight pods, but over time the rubbery pod deteriorates, making it impossible for the survival of the nanomites. It makes things hopeless for explorers to revisit discovered places in the Deadlands without reconnoitering. However, it is one of their most helpful devices, designed explicitly to help them navigate when roaming around in caves, especially as navigation goes when venturing into the unlight. If an explorer survives the unlight, they usually go become professors, I heard one of my lecturers at Langdon University say. But for the sake of finding lost artifacts, and let us be honest, the money explorers risk their lives going under the surface, where ancient cities fell, to find treasures worth more than mystic silver, books of long ago, making knowledge one of the highest earning commodities. I was to accompany my fellow explorers and recent graduate classmates with armed military personnel into the unlight, a large cave opening that suddenly appeared outside the city. Soldiers do not always accompany explorers on their explorations. So, I understood this was a special mission, perhaps to harvest a large sum of mystic silver. You might be asking yourself, why not just get on an airship and fly there? I would prefer it. However, Westmain does not see anything under a week's journey on foot as necessary to fly to it. The very reason why explorers are educated and made, after all. An airship usually drops magic beans the day before the journey, giving explorers ample time to track the signal through the Deadlands. Yet, I felt something was exceptional about this undertaking, as I believe we had all assembled, apart from awaiting the arrival of one more. It indeed was arduous as I anxiously waited to set out, much like other explorers who travel only with the necessities of life and carrying a modest means of defending themselves: a drill gun, a single-hand bolt-action weapon that can weigh between 2 to 3 mass units, depending on the design. Some drill guns are designed to be loaded with single drill bits pushed into a rotation chamber. Others have loading clips that house 10 to 12 drill bits at a time. Each drill bit can be between 1/4 to 1/2 a unit in length, depending on the design, and each drill bit is 1/8 of a unit in diameter. It is the sidearm of choice by most, including military personnel. When fired, the bit's velocity travels in the blink of an eye and with immense rotation. The sharp end of the bit can pierce and drill deep through flesh, light armor, and even tough animal hide. Military infantry's primary weapon of choice is the buzzsaw rifle, a pneumatic-powered weapon with a pressurized tank located in the butt of the rifle and attached to the trigger mechanism. The barrel is flat and fastened to a smooth wooden frame, and a grip handle is attached to the front, allowing soldiers to stabilize their aim. The buzzsaw rifle fires small steel saw blades approximately 1/2 a unit in diameter, with each clip holding 30 to 40 saw blades. The front of the barrel has a snap-down bayonet attachment, where soldiers can attach their military-grade bayonet, termed the drill grip. The drill grip is a narrow, sharpened, and threaded piece of metal that can be powered by the rifle's air tank pressure in a high-speed circular motion. A small switch just above the trigger can divert pressure to the bayonet. Only models without this attachment are available to be possessed by civilians, legally. My eyes remained keen that morning as I waited, staring at who would accompany me and watching Westmain's warships fly off in the distance. I carry another fascination for military steam tech, stemming from travelling with my father as a youth. Thus, seeing warships remind me of home, though I am not often fond of my parents. I usually prefer my own company. My family and I have lived in Westmain my whole life, yet I have a couple of fond memories of travelling with my father to Eastgard. As a former top military academy graduate, my father's intellect made him a brilliant high-class officer and a businessman when he left Westmain's reserves. In the days when he was on active duty, we travelled to Eastgard together. I was about 8 years old then. What I remember most is my father's wonderment of warships, an awe I share with him. He and I specifically toured the most famous warship during our visit, Skyhaven, the saviour of Eastgard. The massive warship is approximately 43,200 units long, 30,240 units wide, and has a hull depth of 21,600 units, harnessing 10 giant balloon lifts and expanding 50 wings that hold 2 giant propellers each. It has 25 levels, including the main deck, each one approximately 864 units high. The lowest level of the hull is the thickest part of the warship and houses exploding death orbs, EDOs, that drop from 200 different EDO bays, dispensing 100 EDOs at a time. Along Skyhaven's deck and down to the 23rd level are mounted cannons evenly spaced apart. There are 225 cannons on each level, bringing the total number of cannons to 5,175. Like on most warships and some merchant airships, pressure pipes are connected to each cannon's breech that shoots steam up through the cannon's muzzle when the cannon valves open. Pressure continues to shoot out until the cannon valves are closed. The cannon pipes' pressure is controlled by an automatic steam release valve or SR valve. When built up to a certain amount of pressure, the SR valve allows only enough pressure to be released to prevent the cannon pipes from expanding or exploding. When ready to fire, a loaded cannonball is inserted into the muzzle, keeping constant pressure flowing up to the cannons. I turned my attention back to the 6 other newly recruited explorers, all boys and fresh from the university, waiting by the dwelling gates, along with 7 well-seasoned veteran explorers and 31 military personnel. I gripped the drill gun my father bought me for the expedition, latched to my hip in its polished holster. He bought me the clip design, loaded with 12, because he said I needed to learn how to shoot, and the more bits I had, the better. The boys bragged amongst themselves, like a grunting and haughty sort of sus that displays its dominance toward the butcher before being seized, cut open, and hanged upside down by its hindquarters to be bled out. The deafening sounds are what my father refers to as squealing profit. Squealing profit is how my family retains its wealth. My father became a 3rd-generation tailor supplier after his military service, producing the largest supply of souse hides in West Maine. The meat of the souse is sold to local meat markets, of course, while the hides remain preserved to become the latest fashion. The hides are usually dyed and made into all types of clothing. Leather is also made from Bos taurus, Equus caballus, or Ovis aries, combined with either gossypium or cannabis fibers to create immaculate apparel. One should know a bit of historical context here about how dyes distinguish the characteristics of one's societal position today. There are 8 primary dye colours, 4 made by tailors for the upper middle class who can afford the credit rates and wear either royal crimson, dark cocoa, royal cocoa, or gold. The colours of dull, stone, muck, and tan hide are worn more by the lower class societal members. Thus, my closet growing up was filled with a hanging bloodbath draped down in the shapes of skirts and dresses, sometimes mixed in with dark cocoa or gold trim. If it is at all beneficial to distinguish clothing colour to depict the treatment of social class, then I best mention people's ethos descriptors as well. As I am sure ethos descriptors have changed much since the Great Collide, I would have historical records reveal the current knowledge of this present age. Though I am not a historian of how these terms came to be, I know that Eastgard pressed for such standings to be applied to describe the skin tone features and bone structure of a person's ethos makeup. Nationality is used in combination when describing a person's genetic markers that make up their appearance and personhood. The list of nationalities is Eastgardian, Westmanian, and Nodian. There are 2 relative eye-shape descriptors, sphere eye and oval eye. Finally, the ethos descriptors consist of sable face, cocoa veil, crimson veil, gold veil, cram veil, and pale face. I'm what you would call a Westmanian sphere eye pale face. An expected social norm is to use ethos descriptors for classifying lineage. Still, even those of the same lineage can be subject to discrimination if they are of lower class, depicted by their clothing colour. However, one exception to the rule is the sable faces from the southern region of Nod are quite unwelcoming to any Eastgardian or North Nodian, no matter the colour of their clothing. The discrimination mostly comes from their refusal to trade, as the Kingdom of Nod remains in discord between the North and South and has been lengthier than Westmain's civil conflict. Eastgard has continued trade solely to the north of both kingdoms, allowing the regions to fend off the onslaught from southern rebels. But let us return to speak of clothing. I find tailors fascinating individuals, highly regarded artisans no matter what ethos or region they dwell in, and jealously guard the names for the rarest dyes and styles. Clothing styles and unique colours have their place, as we are all taught early in our lives, no matter what kingdom we hail from. Tailors stick to 4 main styles in their weaving, but each can have hundreds of variations. The first is a damask style, worn mainly by the middle class, while what is known as a leaf damask is usually worn by the upper class and beyond. Both are a variegated pattern of sorts, mostly resembling some type of foliage. The leaf damask is much more detailed and often does not resemble simplicity of any kind. Then there is the prima donna, a highly specialized embroidered weave into formal attire. It intrinsically intertwines with leaf damask patterns and is worn chiefly by royalty or the elite upper class to distinguish themselves from the rest of the commoners, I suppose. Lastly, Slavyansky is considered a military design and is only to be worn by military personnel. The embroidery is usually sewn into their coat and vest's arms, while the rest of their uniform is free from any civilian style. Military rankings also relate to colour, but mostly stay in the dulls, stones and mucks, lest they are a high-ranking officer. In East Guard, low ranks are mucked out from head to toe, while high positions remain in royal crimson. In Westmain, stone is chosen for low ranks and royal azure for high-ranking officers. I should note that only Westmain tailors create azure dye, and it is strictly used for military officers. In Nod, they are a mix of dull and tan hide for low ranks and gold for higher ranks. This leaves the 2 of the rarest colour dyes, and honestly, if a person can afford heaven-coloured clothing, they are much too rich to exist, in my opinion. High-end tailors display a heaven outfit in their windows to passing customers, showcasing such fabric decadence to advertise their shop and skills, but only one outfit in a single size. As for Mystic Midnight, its development is for one specific person. Every tailor I have known who carries the dye reserves it expressly for MKRs. I had never seen Mystic Midnight clothing worn until that day by the dwelling gates. Prior to Elior's arrival, I was having trouble not overhearing the constant boasting of my classmates, hormone-driven boys, also dressed in royal crimson, except for one in dark cocoa. I stepped away from them to give myself peace of mind, only to spot his entrance from the crowd. It startled me initially, because the air around him seemed to bring a strange calm. He was undoubtedly a sphere eye with a cream veil complexion. I can only describe his features as young yet seasoned, flowing into the jawline of his beard that was slightly streaking heaven. His beard and hair held a gold hue, but his eyes caught me and drew me into the peaceful demeanour of his constant smirk. As he walked closer, I saw that his sphere eyes swirled and interchanged between sunny day azure skies, golden starlight, and a bright hue of viridescent meadow fields, something one might find in an art gallery of sorts. He wore a fit and flare frock, as is the norm for men's overcoats, that swayed down to the back of his thighs like a sleek Mystic Midnight drape. It had copper-coated buttons down the front and along the wrists. I could barely see his stone-coloured long sleeve through his frock, also covered by a Mystic Midnight suss-hide gentleman's vest with a unique leaf damask design infused with what appeared to be azure in the thread. It was snap-buttoned up except for the top, revealing more of his stone undershirt. His trousers were sleek, skinny denim, solid Mystic Midnight with stained dark cocoa outlays. His jaunty sus waist harness was stained to a glossy Mystic Midnight shine. His Ovis Aries wristband wrapped around his left wrist, inlaid with an SAC, and his hands were covered in polished Seuss Mystic Midnight gloves. His steel plate-toed, leather-strapped boots were stained dark cocoa, as was the shoulder harness holding 2 copper-plated rotator drill guns just peeking out of his frock. He reached up to take off his top hat as he approached me. It was a pleasantly crafted Mystic Midnight hat with a dark cocoa band around the rim. He brought the hat over his chest and slightly bowed as is customary to a lady. With one soft breath, he spoke to me. "Greetings, miss. Might I inquire if this is the explorer party to set out today?" At first, I did not say anything as I could not stop my gaze toward his unusual yet fitting hairstyle. A close side trim and high fade into a wavy and lengthy slicked-back tail. The expense of such a cut is well worth taking the time to describe it. Suddenly, I realised I was gawking. He was still waiting for my answer and sustaining a polite grin. I pushed out a kind smirk of my own and replied, "Why, yes, it is good, sir.